Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. It's amazing to see such a crowd here, but it's no surprise, of course. We have the amazing Ros Hubbard here. I've only recently come to know Ros, and she's been so kind and so encouraging. She has a huge plethora of accolades. From 1976, you set up Hubbard Casting with your husband John, and since then she's gone on to cast for films like Commitments, Waking Ned, of course, which is one of your...
Dingle.
Yes, Dingle. The Bourne Trilogy, the Vinci Code, just to name a few. They were presented with the Oscar Wilde Award in 2011 in Los Angeles. 2014, inducted into the American Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which is incredible.
Great
and
honour.
in 2018, you were awarded the Spotlight Casting Director Award at the IFTA Awards. So Ros is here to give us a bit of insight into how she managed to make it so successful into Hollywood. Give us some of her insight and so.
Well, thanks, Maggie. Marvellous. I'm really nervous today. If you were a room full of difficult actors, I'd be fine. But you're nice, real people, and that's really scary. But it is one of the great things about Dingle, is that you mix with real people and people who have a diversity about them that isn't stuck in the trade of filmmaking, the business of filmmaking. I was born with the lights. My mother had a shop in Dunville Avenue in Ranelagh, and it was called Rosalind's, and I was called after the shop. So I am she. And it's still there if you want to go back and have a look at it. It's a preserved sign. My dad was in the ESB, he was an engineer, and it's his handwriting, and he got it made there, Buckshee, and I bet he never paid for it. So there you are, dishonesty from the beginning. So I went to school in Sutton to begin with the great Stella Doyle, who's local Dingle, and we've been friends since we were about 5, and that's how I came to Dingle in the first place. And then I went to Roslyn Park, name again, in Sandymount, and I stayed there till the leaving. And by then my mother thought I was overeducated and far too rude anyway, and I was shipped off to America with her, where she was a nurse. And I did a sort of first job I was offered, and I didn't push myself in any way, and I kind of liked, but I didn't get near the business of filmmaking at all. There I wasn't. I was in an insurance company, learning typing and things like that. So I missed Ireland a lot, and I had a good life in Dublin, and I wanted to get back to Lansdowne rugby players and so-and-so soccer players. I couldn't wait to get back to Dublin. So I got back, and I worked in a model agency. It was a lady called Betty Whelan. You're all too young to remember. Does anybody remember?
I remember.
She was fabulous, and she taught me a lot of great things for life. She was very charming and very beautiful, and she was as cute as a pet fox. And she told us everything we needed to know, and I learnt from her a lot of how to manage your life, how to manage yourself in difficult situations, and just keep your eye on the ball. So then I went back to America, and I worked in J. Walter Thompson, and this was it was the biggest single advertising agency in the world, and it was in the days of Mad Men. So I spent most of my time hiding, ducking, and saying no, and because I knew the nuns would know if I did anything bad. So I worked in J. Walter Thompson for a year, and it was fantastic, and I certainly learned a lot there about just kind of keeping your cool a little bit, hearing what's being said, and then maybe using that while you move forward in business terms. I wasn't a complete business whiz, but I did watch and I did learn from account executives and people who were doing wonderful copywriting, and it was great fun as well. You never went through a day without laughing. My main job was bringing Tennessee Ernie Ford or Perry Como into lunch with my boss and leading him out again afterwards. It wasn't hard. If you came from Ireland or England, you got a great job and you did very little. You had to dress nicely and look well. That was about it. And I began to realize then I'd quite like to learn about advertising. I was just on the verge of going in and learning about that. And I went home for a holiday and I didn't go back. I think I met somebody. So, as you can see, not really a person who really plans her life properly. So then 2 friends of mine in Dublin and myself, Christine Davis, glamorous model, and Simone Judd, very rich girl, we opened a model agency of our own. It was called Impact, and we were the mini-skirted, long earrings types. We weren't the Miriam Woodburn type, you know, everybody 6 foot tall and ladies. We were the mad ones, and we had all our models from Crumlin and Inchicore, and they were great. And they did extremely well. They were the new look. You know, they were all startlingly pretty and young, and the ones who'd been waltzing up the ramps for the last 10 years got quite frightened by these fabulous young girls who did a lot of film, television, and, you know, it shook the bag a bit. Right, what did I do then? I met John Hubbard, and he's here today too, and he's come to cheer me on, but he was in advertising, and he was long-haired, purple shirts, you know, really very English and with it. So I fell for him, and he could play the guitar, and we had great fun. We're married 50 years now. And he certainly encouraged me greatly. And he was saying, you know, you should be casting. I know you're an agent, but you're making no money. And by the way, talking of running your own business, we were making no money, but we were having great time. I see a little girl on a cheese packet here for Calvita. When you're going around, her name was Connie Dickey. I was her agent. She got about 3 guineas, one off for that job. And I keep meaning to write to the managing director of Calvita and say, listen, sunshine, that kid's been used too long. I don't even know where she is nowadays. But John really encouraged me to talk, because I wanted to cast. I got the feeling, God, I'd much rather be doing that than running models' lives. And we'd begun to take on actors. I think our first actor was Hal Roach, and our second one was Joe Lynch. Again, you lot won't know, but some people will know those. And they were very successful. So that was quite good. And then commercials started. Again, quite a new territory. I'd been in it in America, but Ireland just started having lots of commercials, and I had to borrow the video camera from John's office and pretend it was ours. My mum would come in dressed as the maid, serving Irish coffee, which the Americans who would be using us. And I met some very nice directors then, and I began to think a little further than commercials, but that was as far as I got, really. John suddenly decides he wants to go back to London. He is English. He was a brilliant copywriter. He'd done a great butter ad for Ireland, Cyril Cusack doing the voiceover and everything. So back we trot to America, to England, and I had my children, Amy and Dan. And 3 years later and a bit, I went to work on Christmas week, because John got stuck in some woman's own commercials. Nobody would cast them Christmas week. He said, will you do it? And I said, well, I have to do it. He won't be home for lunch. So that started it in London. And I became quite well known for doing good work, seeing lots more people myself and showing fewer. There's stories about not showing too many in casting. I'll give you a quick one. How I learned not to overdo it with directors was, my friend Mary Maguire, her father had shops. They were Teddy Boys and show band shops all over Dublin, Capel Street, New Street, Parnell Street, all the streets. And we used to work there on Saturdays. We got 10 shillings each and went to Fushardi's for lunch. And we thought it was great. And one day a Ted came in, and he had pink socks and he had long and drain pipes. And he said, do you have any flashy socks? I said, do you mean like luminous? Yeah, I think that's right, yeah, luminous. So I said, yeah, we have loads of, and I'm talking like this from Roslyn Park, you know. I said, loads. So I take out the first box and I'm saying, there's pink, there's lime green, there's striped blue and yellow. And he's going, no, I don't think so, no. So I get the next box up, and these were round balls and diamonds and absolutely amazing. No. And all the time Mary's dad is watching me do this sale. Another box up, and it went on. And eventually he said, no, I'm sorry, there's absolutely nothing there. And he went. And I looked at Mr. Hughes and I said, what did I do wrong? And he said, you showed them too many. Big rule when you're doing a service like casting is keep the numbers down and the quality up, because again, another film I did later on, I think it was called Warlock, and first day we had about 8 actors in, very dignified, and at the end of it, a marvellous man who'd worked on a big, I didn't know I was going to tell this story, so I've forgotten loads of names. He'd just done a huge Vietnamese film and all about the American army out there, and he said, now Roz, it was great, but you know, we need to see at least 4 times that amount. So I said, oh no, well, we only showed the miss with an attitude, you know. I've lost that now, by the way. All directors are marvellous now. But then I was trying to tell them his business. Anyway, next day I did increase it, but not much, because I couldn't. I had to go home and feed the children and whatever. And the guy who got it on the first day was Richard E. Grant. It was his first film, and he went on to do Withnail and I then, of course, he hasn't looked back. And what he did in the session with me, and I didn't show too many, was he threw me to the ground and beat me up, and it was like, this was what you had to give at a casting session in those days. So on we went, and I did get a very good name for commercials, and I thought I would never break into film because people would look down their nose on commercials. Oh, she only does commercials, oh my God, you know. But I also had a vague inkling that the minute I'd start on film, I'd be good and I'd get there. But it was only my own belief. John decides to give up a beautiful, well-paid job in advertising and join me. He broke his kneecap playing football, and while he was recuperating, he was helping. And that was really the beginning of the grown-up company, in that we had to be very serious because he was losing quite a lot of money in a BMW and all the usual perks that go with advertising. And he joined me. He had to be apprenticed through the union, because we had a very strict union in the film business in those days, extremely strict. Another story, but I might not tell you that story today. And John trained, but of course John could train me. He was brilliant with actors, he loved them. It was really what he should have been doing anyway. So we started off, and our first television was a thing called Max Headroom, and it was all about a computer generated, I mean, it would be an AI, but we didn't know what an AI was then. And he was the most incredible creature, generated out of a computer. Matt Frewer played him, and I suppose, I don't think I've done anything quite as far out as that since. It was pretty much ahead of its time. And why he was called Max Headroom was he was driving his car, and he hit the thing, you know, the barrier that goes down, hit it, and the only words he could remember when he came round were Max Headroom, which is what's written on the bar. So that was how that started. And the first films we ever did was The Commitments, and I am a Dubliner, and the other one was a thing called The American Way, and that was with Dennis Hopper and Michael J. Pollard, and they were both in the program, both in AA. They were as nervous and as, you know, they were the first people I'd actually met who were healing that way and were so hyper and so amazingly good. And the big game between them was whoever left first lost points. No, gained points. So Dennis would say, Michael's not gone, is he? You know, this would go on. But they were great fun. The Commitments was a gift from God. I mean, we went into Dublin. We were given about 3 months, which you're not given now to cast. Doesn't matter. We've done Lord of the Rings. You're lucky if you get a month or 2 months on those big films. And we went out every night to. Dublin was full of rock and rollers and bands, and we both loved music, so we loved that bit. And we'd go into the Bagot Inn or somewhere like that and say, "Who's your one? What's she doing with the camera?" You know, again, Dublin, we're in again. And we'd walk up at the end, and they wouldn't have managers or anything. They'd barely be strung together themselves at the time. And we'd say, "Will you come and do a workshop tomorrow?" And to their amazement, we'd be in doing these lines with Roddy Doyle's great lines, and very Dublin piece of work. And it just fell together brilliantly. The first day Alan Parker came into Dublin to meet those actors, he wrote a letter after it saying, I have to admit to a certain amount of disappointment. They all seemed very shy. And of course then I had to tell them, well look, they all know you and know your work and they're utterly overwhelmed by you, so let's workshop. So he devised how we'd do them. And we had a band call, and all of the bands that were of interest and the faces within the bands and the characters and the abilities they had were noticed. And what he did was, he said, let's make them play first so they get into their own métier. And they played 2 songs, and this couple danced, and it was quite well done. And therefore they'd go dance, where was that? It was on the river somewhere in a pub, I can't remember the name of the place, and down, and the kitchen was about the size of this chair, and Alan Parker was there, the camera would be there, and I was sitting somewhere around the pots reading in for them. And they were very up though. They'd played, they did what they were good at, therefore they weren't afraid to try acting because it was completely alien to them. Most of the commitments weren't actors, the boys anyway. The girls fell together really quickly, and again Alan Parker, genius, noticed when he'd peep out he'd see who was talking to each other, and he could see the chumming up of those 3 girls. And he thought, that's it, they're pals, you know, and they gradually, and they were all brilliant, that wasn't the only reason. And those girls have gone on to be quite serious actors. The boys are all mostly still in bands. Robert's not, Robert Hawkins, who was the manager guy in it. He was no trouble at all, oh my God. So we finished that, and we went to Hollywood to that premiere, and I think they were so fascinated with the Irish characters and faces and ability and humour. They hardly spoke to Mr. Parker. It was, to us, they wanted to talk about where we got those amazing individuals and were they all trained actors, and you know. And we made the unsung Oscar in Premiere magazine. So that went very well. After that, a lot of people came after us. We were set up with a beautiful calling card of the commitments and Max Headroom. So we had to try and keep going then, because you're only as good as your next film. Really, that is true. And just when you feel it's all safe is when it gets really dicey around the edges, and they think, those Hubbards think they're rich, you know, and they're making too much money anyway. Which is not true, of course. I want to just go back to the first one, Impact. One of the mistakes I made there, and my partners, was we stayed in it. We should have closed the company. We weren't making any money. It was great fun. Our pictures were in the paper. But we were actually wasting our time, in fact. And that is a mistake, to keep going. You know, go out and get financed, go out and find something else, but don't keep flogging a dead horse is my absolute advice in business. So John and I were away. We've done so many films, I don't remember them all. I was looking at our CV today and I thought, oh God, I've forgotten we did that. So we did loads and loads, and everything went well. You may ask me something about them as we go on, or Maggie may. The first job I think we ever did in Dingle was not Ron Howard's best film, but it was Far and Away. And it was great once he went to America, but in Dingle, where we met some of the most incredible people, matchmakers who were still alive, had come in off the island. I felt I was on a historical privilege of some kind. You'd sit down with them and you wouldn't be 5 minutes, you'd be half a day chatting to these people. But we did have a lovely time, and the cooperation around here, and John was doing a deal with a guy who was supplying horses. You probably all know who it is. And I'm not going to say it though, but he's a great character. He looks like John Wayne. He goes around here a lot in his little pony and trap. Heather, Curran. He was being booked, and John had to do the deal. And he said, so now how much how much do you think you're going to cost me? He said, well, how much is your man getting? And John said, who? Tom Cruise. So that was really the basis of the start of that deal. Didn't quite end up the same. I would say, first of all, do train if you can and if you can afford it, or else do the best of classes. Don't do every class. Look for the really good ones, find out how they're written up. But if you're lucky enough to go to the Gaiety or RADA, take it very seriously. your body temple really happens when you're an actor. You can't go around getting drunk, taking drugs, falling over. You have to be a healthy person. That's number one piece of advice for any actor. And also, it gets around if you're a messer. It gets around if you arrive late. It gets around if you've got a hangover and you can't do your work. It's amazing. Actors get away with nothing. So take it very seriously. When you've qualified and you've finished, and they do get in, casters and agents, mainly agents come in to see your end of term stuff. Sometimes they immediately light on something. Usually it's what they're looking for that year. It's not because anybody's any better. It's because that's the genre, that's the fashion they're looking for. So don't be disappointed if you're not grabbed in the first go. John has this theory that any agent is better than no agent. I'm not sure about that, but he says at least that agent is hearing what's going on. Keep watching. Go into Spotlight. You know what Spotlight is? Yeah. It's a magazine, it's a book, and it's all online now. I used to have to wear things on my hands because I turned it so often, Now you're on the net, and it's brilliant. And if you're not in Spotlight, you're basically not in acting. It used to be the director that had final say. Now there are a huge amount of those things called producers around, usually Harvard businessmen, and they have their eye on the ball very seriously. And there is a thing called sales agents. We have other names for them, but I can't say it here. Sales agents are the guys who sell the film, and what they want always is big names. You've seen it. And you've seen mistakes made, you've seen miscasting, you've seen embarrassing work on because they've got a big name. But truthfully, we have to work with it because it does sell. A lot of people who are going to the pictures, they're saying, oh, who's in it? It is a question, but a lot of films get very successful without having big names in them. And that's why I get upset with sales agents. I want them to work harder selling the picture, because we don't have the budgets in Ireland or England that the Americans do. We have 5 million would be an average low-cost film here. Not low, average film cost. You are, and the director will come in, is usually he or she is usually very nice, but the producers and the sales agents say, so can you get Michael Fassbender? Michael Fassbender's fee is more than the whole budget. Why would you even try? And we've lost the courage to go out there and find new actors, new faces. It used to be television that gave them the chance, but now television is even showing big names, However, it's still a great place to go for. Don't leave college saying, I've got to do film. Don't. Do whatever you're given, actually. If you get a theatre tour, you couldn't have a better learning. It's the best. You're smelling a live audience every night. They don't give in to you because you've turned up on time. They give in if you're good. And how I know a good actor is pretty much the same as anybody in the audience. You get a kind of a chill on the back of your neck and you think, I'm in the presence here of a great talent. And it's just instinctive. What is helping is shorts. Because sometimes you see a really good script, somebody comes in, they don't have a lot of info about how to do it. If they make a short out of that film, it's a great calling card. It also shows people how you're going to make it, how good you are, and you're making it on fourpence. And I think it's the best thing that's happened to find new directors and new filmmakers. And a thick skin. And a lot of luck. And going to the festivals, seeing what they're showing and getting the pace of it. And the minute you start saying to yourself regularly, I can do that, you probably can, you probably can, yeah. Equity is not as powerful as it was in England. They're a little bit more ratty in Ireland and tough. It's mainly if you're doing a contract of a certain type, you have to be in equity. But also, if you get that job, they should be taking you. Since when has a union the right to be a closed shop to people who are professionals? And you fight it hard, and you get your letters from people like me saying, I think she's great, please consider her. But what's wrong about equity is they don't fight the rounds like they used to. They don't really protect actors, you know. It's sad, and they know a lot about the business, and I wish they would get some power back, but they're not as powerful as they were. No. He came into the office and he met Mary and me, and he just wowed us. I mean, he's got a great presence, he's great looking, and he's a brilliant film actor. So he gave himself up and he came in, and he did Tigerlands, I think, before that, but it hadn't come out and nobody knew. And I think I'd seen a screening with John, and we knew we were selling a good thing, and he came in and read for it, and he got it, you know. And there was what was lovely, therefore, was not having to have a big name. He was nobody at the time, you know. Yeah. Hang your nerves on the hook with the coat. Take them by all means to the session, leave them outside, come in and claim your part. It's your part until it isn't. You know, you're guilty till you're proved innocent in this world. So go in, own the part, listen to the director. You don't have to listen to anybody else in the room, really. You might hear the odd suggestion, but our discipline is to always say it to the director. Well, I wouldn't say it anyway, but a producer would always address a director. So you hear what's going on, but you don't have to answer. Only the director controls that room, you know, and listen to what they have to say. Don't panic if they make you do it over and over again. That means they're working with you. That's a compliment, you know. If it continues the way it is, being mega. I mean, there's brilliant actors in Ireland, brilliant comedians, and we just saw Tommy Tiernan doing a really sad, vicious part in a film that hasn't got a release yet. It was shown at the festival here. Can you remember at the island? Long, dark. Yeah. I mean, you had to. It was a very, very dark film, but how brilliant were those actors? And they're all Irish, and they're all English speaking, which helps because if Brexit goes on being ridiculous, this is an English speaking country with great film technique and experience. Great. Yeah. So I see it going high.
That's great.
So on that note, I'd like to thank Roz for all of your advice.